Hey guys, and welcome to 0 to 3, number 4. I'm Justin Bailey, and we're going to be listening with Justin today. As you can see, I've got some binoculars here, and these things are really cool for seeing things that are far away and making them up close. They're great for hunting, sporting events, concerts, all that kind of stuff. They do have some shortcomings, though, because if you notice, when you've got these things on, you can't really see what's going on either side of you. So when they do use these in the Army, they actually have a spotter that watches out around the person using them to make sure that nobody sneaks up on them. Now, like I said, these are great for sporting events and hunting, but when it comes to our relationships with others, they don't fly. You know why? Because we're so focused on other people, we don't get what's going on around us. And that's what Paul was telling the Romans in Rome. He said, you know what, you guys are looking at the culture around you, and sure, it's corrupt and evil, but you're using that to blow yourselves up and make yourselves feel good about yourselves. They were using their own spiritual condition to feel proud, and what it caused them to do was overlook their sins because they couldn't see what was going on around either side of them. See, Paul wants to remind us that self-righteousness doesn't bring salvation. And in fact, that kind of behavior takes for granted the patience and the goodness and the forbearance that God has brought to us, all as sinners. See, with the actions of the Romans were actually, instead of bringing them close to God and bringing them close to other believers, driving them away. See, Paul wanted them to use one of these, a little mirror, to kind of look and to evaluate their condition that way, because that way they would know what's going on in their own hearts and deal with it. They couldn't deal with it when they were looking through the lenses and focusing on other people's lives. See, we see in verse 11 that God is not partial to any of this pious, proud behavior, and it couldn't do anything to save him because God himself doesn't show favoritism. So many of the Jews knew the law backwards and forwards, and many of us know the Bible, a lot of stories about it. We know a lot of things about it, but it's only as valuable as it affects our life, right? So it's got to change our life. It can't just be head knowledge. It's got to take place in how we do things day in and day out in relationships, at work, at school, and with our families. Have you ever watched a Christian and thought, you know what? They sure don't act like a Christian. In fact, a long time ago, somebody said to me, man, are you a Christian? I kind of heard what you said and saw how you acted, and I will never forget that. It stung me because I realized, you know what? I'm being a hypocrite. What I believe in my head is not lining up with what I do in my life. So the Jews knew the law, but their knowledge didn't inspire obedience, which is why in verse 24, Paul quotes Ezekiel 16:27 saying, God is blasphemed among the Gentiles because of you. See, the Gentiles were looking at the Jews and saying, man, if that's how God is, I don't want any part of it. That's how bad it was. The Jews behaved so poorly that they were dragging God's name through the mud. See, Paul wants us to understand that this is not what is on the outside that counts, but what is on the inside. So I encourage you with that this week. As you read chapter 2 in Romans and study it, think about how you're viewing other believers and how you're thinking about yourself. Are you being proud? Are you being arrogant? Are you being just like the Romans were at the time? Or are you evaluating yourself and being honest with yourself? This is Justin Bailey signing out and saying have a great week. We'll talk to you on Monday.